Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Getting Repped for Post-Production panel. This is going to be a wonderful panel. I'm very excited to bring you our guests very shortly. We are Black Magic Collective. We're a collective of film and TV artists and crew. We have events and initiatives and classes and equipment giveaways, and we're all about the business and craft of filmmaking. Membership, of course, is free. You can join our newsletter on our site, blackmagiccollective.com. And of course, you can like us on our social media accounts to stay in the know about what's going to happen next. Welcome to everybody who's here. Let us know what your role in the filmmaking process is. We get all kinds of people who are interested in filmmaking and involved in all kinds of roles here. So whether it's, cast or post-production or you're a director or whatever, let us know in the comments box. Let us know where you're watching from, what brings you here today. As far as what else is coming up on the Black Magic Collective front, we have a film festival that's going to be in LA on November 10, and we have an awards luncheon on November 11. So if you're in the LA area, feel free to join us there in person. And thank you to our sponsor, so our Black Magic Design and Sigma. They're wonderful supporters. Actually, speaking of that, we'll be giving out a seat of DaVinci Resolve software to one of our live attendees in the chat. And we'll be announcing who is going to win that at the end of the show. So if you put a question in the chat, you'll be eligible to win a DaVinci Resolve seat, and that's a wonderful benefit. All of you probably know about how versatile that software is already. As for me, I'm Chris Edgar. I'm a composer and a songwriter for film and whatever other media I get called upon to work in. Most recently, I worked on a feature film called Playing with Beethoven, which is a movie where the actors actually performed the music live on set. And so I had the unique experience of conducting musicians live on set and then trying to make those performances work later on in post. And that was in theaters and is now available as video on demand. So without further ado, let's bring in our wonderful guests. The first one I'll bring in is Arbel Bidak. We have Arbel there. There we go. Arbel, hello. He is the owner and creative agent at Spectra Creative Agency, representing a diverse roster of media composers and music supervisors and a catalog of music for licensing. He is a multifaceted music creative who has worked across many aspects of music in media over the past decade, from creative sync to publishing to composer representation. And I don't think I'll read the full bio because it's just, it has such amazing material and it's so impressive that, I wouldn't be able to bring, if I read all the guest bios, I wouldn't be able to get to the questions and the meat of this. But let's bring in our next guest, Kevin Korn. There we go. Hi, Kevin.
Hey.
Kevin is a dynamic and accomplished agent who has spent over 10 years in the film music industry, enriching the lives and careers of accomplished and budding, forward-thinking artists and composers. Kevin is known globally for his ability to develop and nurture a new, diverse generation of film and television composers, many of whom are already destined to be Hollywood's A-list composers of tomorrow. His management company is called Like-Minded Management. So welcome, Kevin.
Hey.
And last but not least, let's bring in Sarah Kovacs. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Hello.
Sarah is an agent at Craft Angle Management, one of the world's leading agencies specializing in representing composers, songwriters, music producers, and music supervisors in film, theater, television, and video games. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for having us. Hey.
And I thought I'd start by asking, well, yeah, getting right into it, because I know a lot of the people here are going to be composers and other people in post-production who are interested in seeking out representation. It seems like there are a couple of different viewpoints on representation or on finding it. There are some people who say that the agent or manager you need will find you when you get involved with a big enough project that's significant enough to warrant their involvement. And if you're trying to find one before then, that may not be a good use of your time. And other people say that you should take a more proactive approach to finding representation. And I wonder what your views are about this. Why don't we start with you, Arbel?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's something in between, it's helpful, to you want to make sure people know who you are and everything, but, the right time to be signed is going to be when an agent feels like, you have enough momentum going for yourself that they're going to be able to build upon. And sometimes it may feel like you have some momentum, and maybe the other folks don't necessarily see it, or and you can't like necessarily take offense to that because you don't want someone to sign you and not be able to do much with you.
Right.
But I think it can be helpful to reach out. Just be ready that like someone might tell you it's not the right time, or you may not hear back, and then just kind of don't stop what you're doing. I think a lot of people think that like an agent is going to suddenly just like be this like key that just unlocks everything, and it's a team effort, and you still are always kind of working for your own career. So it's just keep doing what you're doing is I think the biggest thing. Don't stop and be like, no, I don't move forward until I like find an agent.
Yeah, and that's an important point. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to comment, Arvel, I wish we had that power.
Yeah.
I wish,
The key is right
make
here.
magic happen.
Yeah. Let me pull a project right out of my pocket for you. Here you go.
Yeah, I've been just holding on to it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, if you're a composer, even if you are represented, you are going to have to constantly be marketing and promoting yourself, I guess is the point. Having an agent is not going to absolve you of that responsibility.
To Arbel's
Yep.
point too, each situation is different. Sometimes you learn about somebody through recommendations, through other composers, through publicists, through just word of mouth, or through a project that you might have seen, and you as an agent might want to go after that composer and find out more they can about them. But it's a process that sometimes takes time about getting to know somebody. I want to know every composer out there. I want to know their backstory. I want to know their history. But there, like Arbel was saying, is there's a certain time where the two connect together. And I can't, if there was one way to do it, I'd write a book and I'd be rich. But instead, there's no one way to skin a cat. You kind of have to look at each individual situation and ask yourself, what can I bring to the table from both sides of the equation?
Yeah, I think it has to be the right moment for that person, and every agent's different. I know for me, there has to be something there that when I'm talking to the people who are hiring composers and music supervisors and songwriters, that they have to sort of know know what I'm talking about. They kind of need to know the project that this person has done. But the other thing too is that sometimes we do want to invest in someone more or less from the ground up of their career because they have something really unique and special about them. Maybe they came out of an A-list composer's tutelage and had been training under them, and there are going to be opportunities for them. Maybe somebody has something going on that aligns with what I'm finding myself working on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So it is about the right timing. And the other feeling I have is that I really feel that it's much better to find someone who's really excited about you than trying to force it when it's just not the right time. So if you are meeting with agents and you kind of get a meh sort of feeling about it, like you want someone who's going to pick up the phone when you call, you're going to be able to reach them, and you're going to be able to participate in a collaboration, because that's what it is. We're not like, we can't make magic happen. Our purpose, and maybe I'm diving into another question, I don't know, but our purpose is to be able to take what you have going and make it better, to build upon it, and to help grow a career as it goes. And it's definitely a two-way partnership where the composer is bringing in relationships and we're helping introduce them to other people. But we do need something. There has to be something there for us to start with. But what that is and at what level is kind of dependent on the agent, on the agency, on the composer. So there, like Kevin said, it does sort of depend.
And I think you do have to have a little bit of faith too, like when you're putting yourself out there and you're doing stuff, folks like us, like we are paying attention, we are looking at folks, we are, and if you're not getting stuff back, maybe it's just not the right time. And suddenly you may hear from one of us because we've been watching and we're like, hey, I've been watching you for the last year and a half, 2 years, and I just saw that you just did this, like we should have a conversation, and so again, it's like kind of be confident in what you're doing and keep doing it. Don't let like, representation kind of be a thing that like stifles you and holds you back from moving forward with just what you're doing, because we're only going to build on what you're already doing, as everyone has said.
Sarah, you mentioned finding people who were assistant to high-profile composers. Would you say that that is one of the most important steps to building a career as a composer, is working as an assistant to an already established person?
No, I wouldn't say that it's the most important step. I think it's a option. I think it is a path of many paths that successful composers have followed. We rep a lot of successful composers who didn't do that. And they've been hired on really exciting, fantastic projects that people have seen, and they have a career, grown out of that. But I also have loads of fun, and I'm seeing lots of success for people who have worked under, big name composers like Chris Beck and Henry Jackman, Chris Lennertz. Their teams they've cultivated this talent, and these folks are now, flying on their own and doing extraordinarily well. I think there are a lot of benefits to that path. There's pros and cons to any choice in life, right? But for that path, I think there are a lot of pros. You get the experience being in the room with filmmakers, supporting the person you're working for, experience writing. You have to be talented to come to the table. So that's not even on the checklist. Like if you're already here, you can write good music, but it's all the other things. It's most of this job it's a small fraction is about the music. It's really about personalities, being able to navigate a meeting. Maybe it's not going so well. How do you just turn it around? How do you navigate things politically? So much of that can be absorbed almost like training. It's like an education when you're assisting another composer over the years. So I think that is of great value. For me as a salesperson, because that's what we're doing, we are selling composers to directors, producers, music supervisors, studios, productions, etc. As a salesperson, oftentimes there is great comfort in being able to explain to a producer or director who this person is based off of their, they came from, big composers training, and they did additional music on X, Y, and Z big film that I know you've heard of, and they've, are a budding star. There is comfort in knowing like, oh, this person has been involved in these big projects, even though it hasn't been their name on it. I think for the right project, not always, but for the right project, sometimes that is what they're looking for. So I think there's a lot of benefits to it, but it certainly is not required. It's a choice, it's a path, and it's not right for everybody.
Yeah. If you find yourself in a place where you are looking for representation, when you feel like you're at that moment, what do you think would be, and just for anyone who's interested, well, why don't I pick one of you to start, just to keep it organized. What would be the best way to connect with an agent or representative? I know that sometimes you all go to film festivals and award shows and so forth. Is that the best way to try to meet the representative that you're looking for, or is there some other avenue that you would recommend? What do you think about that, Kevin?
There's, like Sarah and Arbella both have said, is that we want to know about you, but also when is the right time and the right place. I think film festivals are a great place to learn about where great new films and great new composers are coming out. And when you have a film festival, I always recommend going to it, meeting new filmmakers, meeting if the agents are there. It's definitely a good place to meet. But for me, and I think for a lot of us, it comes down to learning about not only the films that they've worked on, getting to know their music, but like Sarah was saying, getting to know their personalities. And that takes time. That's not something that happens overnight. It's not like you just meet somebody and you're like, oh, I'm representing you. For me, it usually takes a period of time of getting to know somebody. And like Arbella said, we're doing our research, we're checking out people, we're seeing the marketplace. But a lot of the times, the truth is that recommendations come from a lot of internal people in the industry. From other composers, from studio executives who call us and ask us to meet with people, from producers, directors, and you never know what's going to spark your interest and at the time of what you're looking for. But I think that having a good film in a festival that's getting a lot of attention definitely is a good sign that you're moving towards the right direction of things. But at the same time, we're working on our clients' projects to get into the film festivals where they're getting, the same visibility at the same time. So film festivals are a great thing. I've always been, and unfortunately they don't have the Sundance labs anymore, but like labs like that, programs where you can go and get yourself involved in the community and meet other composers, meet other filmmakers, and meet people that can help you expand upon your current situation, will probably help you get more into the worlds that you're trying to achieve, because we do get recommendations from a multitude of places. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of word of mouth. It's a lot of colleagues, sharing, I love asking for us to meet with people. I hear it from a lot of my clients, of friends they have, other composers that they really believe in. For me, it's definitely more word of mouth, and just immersing yourself in the business you want to be in, being in the industry, and just start somewhere. And as you build relationships, and people are looking to hire composers, especially composers looking for assistance and help in their studio. I mean, that's a great in. And, composers are asking each other all the time. They're asking us, we're asking clients, hey, I have so-and-so who needs some more help. Who do you know? Names just get circulated all the time. And that's most of the time how I hear of people, or I'm watching a thing that I fall madly in love with, and I have to meet them. We have to talk about this project. I love the music you did for it, etc. Arbel, I cut you off.
No, you're fine. I mean, I was going to say, because I think even just the question of like, the way you started the question of like, okay, you're now looking for representation. I always just kind of like, okay, but what does that even mean? Which is again, kind of, I guess, the topic of all of this. So it's like, first of all, so like evaluate, like, why is that? And, I think if you are at a place where really you do kind of need representation, you probably already have those connections that both Kevin and Sarah have been talking about around you that will already kind of be maybe even already telling you, hey, I think I should introduce you to someone, or like you can tap into. Also, I think one we haven't really touched on is the PROs, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. Those folks are great also for how, they come to us all the time with people. But I would say, just to touch on, like, if you are going to go the route of trying to just sort of reach out, be cool. Like, like it's amazing to me sometimes, people will reach out and out the gate, they're just like, I'm looking for representation. I need an agent. I need, blah, blah, and it's like, if the people who approach, at least me personally, like the people who approach me who maybe I've not connected with before or aren't super familiar with, and just say, hey, I've got some really cool things going on. I'd love to like introduce myself, tell you about where I'm at, share a little bit of music. Is that okay? Like, and not just out the gate bombarding and just assume, kind of making that decision yourself that I need representation. Because again, like we've been talking about, where it's like, we'll probably discover together whether it feels like it's the right time for you to have representation, and maybe someone else feels that it is and I don't, and whatever, and that's how you kind of navigate who you may go with. But I would just say, like, if you are doing that sort of initial outreach, just take the approach of really just kind of being like, here's where I'm at. Can I tell you about it? And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to hear about it. Like, like, and that kind of excites me a lot more, because it feels like a conversation versus someone coming at me and just being like, I need an agent. Are you the one? No, I'm going on to the next one. I was like, okay.
And composers should also want to learn about their agent too, the prospective agent. It should be, I want to hear about your journey. I want to tell you about my journey. And even if they are ready, and on paper they look ready to sign with somebody, it has to be the right match. Expectations have to sort of be in line. Communication style has to kind of be in line. And for me, it's just sort of this feeling of like, I won't be able to sleep at night if I sign someone and know, like, I just can't, like, there's not a path to really being able to roll up our sleeves and try to do something exciting. I have to be able to sort of see the potential and know that I would be able to provide some value to this person. So it's got to be the right fit. That's my opinion.
I agree. I think personality, I mean, we've all, I think, all touched on it at different points. Like personality is such a big thing. Like for me personally, like I'm just a very personable person, and I really truly enjoy just chatting with my clients. Like if they call, like you said, it's like I like answering the phone, like, you know, and that's like, that's also a big gauge for me when I'm talking to someone, you know. It's like, am I going to be able to build that relationship?
Yeah.
And personality is important too, to like Sarah and Marbell were saying, is that we all have different personalities as agents, and finding the right personality that you fit with as well. And I think it is important to understand the agent, their background, their way of working, their thought process, and making sure that your paths are on the same wavelength in some way. And you know, there's different agent personalities, there's different director personalities, there's different producer personalities, and it's finding those like-minded kind of people that you should be working with in your career.
Yeah, and like when I'm getting to know somebody and in that whole process, it's not also just for that relationship, because as I get to know my clients and we build this person, like we get to know each other's personalities, I also then become more and more confident that when I go to send them to a meeting, introduce them to people, even just figuring out who I'm going to want to introduce them to, who I know they're going to mesh with, that all comes from that personal exchange and like getting to know them. I'm like, oh, you're going to love this person, you know, when I'm going out and talking about them to directors and producers and execs.
Yeah. And that seems like a running theme through this conversation, to that, I mean, it's not just when you're interacting with the potential agent, but just at every sort of stage of making film and media projects, that it is so much about relationship management. I mean, you are going to have to take notes from a director, for instance. You are going to have to go, you know, do a spotting session with them or the producers and so forth. That's something that will require a certain amount of relationship management skills that you won't necessarily get by being in a studio like the one I'm in here and kind of like sitting there and working at the computer.
Yeah.
I think it's the hardest thing, because composers are so isolated a majority of the time. And
very
like,
true.
Go build relationships.
Yeah, go be social, go talk to somebody.
Yeah, it was something that I know took a little bit of adjustment for me, but yeah, it can come with practice, even for people who are kind of naturally introverted. If you are in a situation where you're fortunate enough to meet an agent who is interested in establishing a relationship, and then you get offered a contract, what sort of resources would you look to? And I know there are people who have talked to me about this, because sad but true, I'm also an attorney. People have talked to me about this.
That fact blows my mind.
Yeah.
How are you a composer and an attorney? Amazing.
Well, I've had two careers, or I guess I have two overlapping careers at this point, would be the most accurate way to put it. But I'd say the music aspect of it.
Airtight contracts.
Yeah. I do, because I can be full service on one of these indie film projects that I work on. I've actually drafted the legal paperwork on some projects and also done the music. So I guess it's very efficient that way.
Well, that's the answer to, I think, your question is like, what do you do if you're offered in a composer agreement with an agency? My answer to that is you would have an attorney look it over for you.
Yeah.
And the other question that you would ask is, are these the same terms that everybody else at your agency? Has everyone signed this? Is everyone getting the same treatment, essentially? And the answer should be yes for everybody, even the biggest client on the roster.
Kevin, you were going to say something?
I get an attorney. It's always good. Like in your early stages of your career, having a good attorney is so helpful. And there's so many great attorneys out there, and ones who specialize in film music and know this world really, really well. And attorneys and agents can be a great relationship along the way. Having someone that reviews your contracts and things separate from your agency is always a benefit. So getting yourself set up with a good attorney is highly recommended.
Yeah.
We're not attorneys. I think
we're not attorneys.
No, it's really important.
I mean, you are, Chris, but we are.
I mean,
Chris is.
Sorry, the three of us are not attorneys.
We're not.
Still, nothing I say is legal advice
right now.
He is not giving legal advice on this panel. I think it's also important too that when you get past that step and you are starting to work with someone, I think some composers feel like I can't afford an attorney on this project. It's a 20K package or a 5K. It's something really small. It's really indie and I can't afford it. It's always the composer's choice who is going to review their agreements for them. And, you know, I can't speak for Kevin and Arbel, but as a courtesy, I'll look something over and I'll make sure I can identify the deal terms that I negotiated, that they're in there. But I can't tell you if it's okay to sign. I can't tell you what your liability is. I can't like lawyer it for you. And so I will always, so this is a normal thing that you might hear from an agent is like, here's your agreement they sent me. I recommend you have an attorney look this over because I am not an attorney. Please let me know what you want to do. And it's important to know that that will be a choice on every contract, unless you hire an attorney and you go to your agent and say, send every one of my contracts to my lawyer and they'll look over everything. I think that's such an important investment. We are not attorneys. And I think some people forget that, or they kind of go, oh, yeah, but you know what you're looking at. And it's like, yes, but we're not attorneys.
Yeah. And also, like, I think I've gotten before where it's like, it's also important to know, like, we also can't be the ones to like hire an attorney, because if we hired an attorney, they would be representing us and not you. So that's also just to like clarify why it's like, you know, you need to have that person who is representing you and your interests.
And attorneys work on different, you know, they'll work on percentages, they'll work on different hourly rates. Like there's different deals you can make with an attorney to build a relationship early on.
Yep. And you can let them know, hey, I'm on a...
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you can let them know, hey, I'm on a budget on this one. What could we work out? You could put a certain cap number of hours that they're going to look at it. You can ask them just to do a once over. I mean, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, especially when you are just starting out and are doing indie projects and there isn't a lot of money. There's a way you can work something out. Sorry, Arbel, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, and then just for like finding someone, just, you know, ask your composer colleagues, you know, you'll find people who know and can recommend interesting people, like really good people to you. So that's just tap into your network as far as like finding an attorney.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, I don't just work on an hourly basis myself. I'll do flat rates for, independent film projects and people who are in post-production and so forth, or percentages like we were talking about. So yeah, like Sarah said, there is a lot of flexibility about the fee arrangement that you can get with a lawyer. Sometimes if I really like the person, I'll just give them some, you know, free advice on a call or something like that, if I don't have to extensively look at a draft document. So so having a lawyer is probably not out of your reach financially. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Let's ask a question from Ray Fernandez Jr. When evaluating a new composer, what musical characteristics do you consider essential? And are there any particular genres or styles that you believe it should possess? And this is similar to a question I was going to ask, like, should you, in presenting your reel or your portfolio, do you want to focus on a particular niche? Like, oh, I'm focused on action material or horror material or something like that. Or do you want to show how diversified you are as far as your musical styles go?
Sure.
I can jump in. Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
I mean, both Arbel and I are saxophone players. So we have very sax players, very specific. And I think each one of us has things we like, things we don't like, different musical personalities, things that we're drawn into at different times in our lives. But for me personally, I like to see a story behind the music. I like to understand not only the music, but the person behind the music and the music that they're creating. You know, there are composers out there that are extremely diverse, who have an extremely diverse background of scoring different types of things. And then there are composers that do have a niche following a direct path. And that's part of the conversation, I think, that getting to know a composer is understanding not only musically where they're coming from, but musically what they like, what films are they into, what TV shows, what do they see themselves doing in this world? Because not everybody, you know, wants to write in 20 different styles of different things. Sometimes they do want to be niche. So it's hard to say I look for one specific thing, but I think that being able to explain the music that you're writing and the direction that you're going to when I'm talking to you is really important. And being able to understand who you are as an individual and who you are as a composer. But personally, I like a lot of diversity in the toolbox. Coming from I went to school for jazz composition, and I love people that love to learn about music and to understand different styles, different techniques, and different things. And that leads to the conversation that I get into with composers about who they are as a composer and how they compose and their ways of finding sounds and finding directions. So there's not one way to do it, but I think for me personally, it's that I like the story and the understanding behind music that's being created.
I think like to kind of touch on something that Sarah said earlier, you know, like we're salespeople. And so, you know, a lot of also what I'm looking for is like digging for like what is that angle and that thing that how I'm going to be now marketing this person, you know, and it's different for everybody, you know, but like Kevin said, there's some people who really love living in a very niche space that they just are great at and occupy. There's other folks who can write in a lot of different styles and love working across different genre and styles. But then what I look for in that maybe is, again, like kind of a bit of what Kevin was touching on, which is like the story, their process, you know, looking for maybe like a stylistic through line, and whether they're scoring something that's comedy or something that's horror, you can hear that it's them. You know, a lot of things that I talk to about with like a lot of younger composers and developing folks like is, you know, spend that time discovering like who you are. Like, don't just try to fit all these different molds that you're seeing out there, you know, figure out what that sonic identity is or that stylistic identity, or maybe it is part of the synthesis and it's part of the process. Those are all things that we're going to grasp onto and relay to people. Be like, oh, you have to hear how this person like creates this. It's so cool. And like all that, you know, those are the things where I get really excited and I get excited to talk about to someone else, you know. So, and I think the other thing is just like, don't be afraid to just showcase what you're into, what you like doing. I think sometimes people approach this stage and are like, okay, here's my horror reel, here's my drama reel, here's my comedy reel. Like, I just need to show you that I can do all of it. And I'm like, I'm not too concerned that you can do all of it. I want to know like, what is your dream project and like why, and like what's your type of like score that you'd love to write and why, and how would you approach it, and be confident in that and like go for it. You know, don't worry that there's like you're leaving stones unturned or something like that. You know, it's like kind of be confident in like that sort of trajectory that you want to build for yourself, because that's where we're going to come in and start helping you build, like work toward that path and like on that road. So to me, that's I think a lot more interesting. Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, for me, the niche thing is funny because composers are always very worried that they're doing too many comedy projects, too many horror projects, too many this, that, the other, and they're getting stuck. And a lot of it is about opportunity, right? It's like you might have studied John Williams music your whole life, but haven't had the opportunity to write that score. And you're doing a lot of, you know, electronic synth stuff and you like it. But so it's like, it's all about what have you been asked to do? And based off your credits, a lot of filmmakers, you know, you kind of get hired on some of the same things. That often is a thing that can happen, but I don't see that as a negative. I see it as you're really good in this area. So how can we take you from that and jump up to the next level? I think people should turn, if they find themselves in a niche, to turn that into something really positive and wave that flag really proudly. And for me, it's about the passion. What are you the most excited about? And really running with that, because I feel like folks who hire composers, they're going to respond to that in a way that if you are a jack of all trades, I think those are important skills to have, but that will come into play like later on when you're on a project. Maybe there's like an on-camera scene that needs, you know, or you're trying to replace a needle drop and it's like very specific and not in line with the score at all, but maybe it's like a jazz thing that you happen to be really good at, and that's like a service that you can provide as one of the many skills as a composer you have. But I think the best way is to just be really excited and passionate about the things you're really good at, and hopefully that aligns to what you can get hired on, and what you and your agent will work towards as a sales tool.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's great. Let's take another question from the chat. This is from Ian Chen Music. Do agencies here work with composers who have more high-profile works abroad, but not much within the States?
Yeah, I mean, I can give an example. Alexander Desplat was not very well known in the United States, many, many, many moons ago. But Laura Engel, who I work with here, she's the Engel of Craft Engel Management, heard a score of his. He had done a ton of amazing French films and worked with, the leading French directors. And she had heard something there. I think actually he had done, maybe it was Girl with the Pearl Earring. He had done one movie in the States. She'll correct me if she's watching this and tell me the story, but I think he had done one film here. But that's a great example. It's like, you don't have to be a star here. I mean, people are working all over the world. People are making beautiful art and amazing music and telling incredible stories all over the place. And if it's something that we have access to and we can watch and see, there's definitely a path to exploring that for sure. So is it like a geographic question? Because to me, I don't think that could really, especially post-COVID, past 2.5, 3 years, everyone's proven they can work from anywhere. So I don't see that as a boundary.
Yeah, I mean, look at Squid Game. Squid Game, we're getting content from all over the world that is revolutionizing and changing our industry. I was lucky enough years ago to work with a great composer named Johan Johansson, who didn't have many credits in the States, but had a wonderful voice and a wonderful artistic direction. And he had a very, he never really visited the United States, but he had a great career scoring great films like Sicario and Arrival and Theory of Everything internationally. And I've worked with many clients internationally. I think Sarah's right. In this post-COVID world, it's not so much where you are, but the voice that you're bringing from wherever you are.
Yeah.
I didn't know that story about Desplat. That's amazing. I'm such a huge fan of his. Let's take another question from DeAnthony Wooten. Do reps generally focus on film more than games, or are reps pretty open when it comes to reaching out to various industries? In other words, film, games, TV, and so forth.
I would say both.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
There's picture and it needs music.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're there.
Yeah. I started my career representing game composers. My first client ever was Austin Wintry. And who I still work with. It's been 11, 12 years, a little over a decade. And working with him was part of my education into this whole world, especially into games. But we represent folks who are doing, there's so much media that needs music synced to picture. So I think at least when I first started, it was called film music, but really it encompasses so much more. It's visual media. I don't know about you guys, what you find yourselves working on most these days, but I imagine that it's pretty diverse in terms of film, TV, commercials, etc.
I know I've been kind of using the term media composers instead of trying to keep putting film /TV /games and
it goes on and on and on.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's everything, and I've worked quite a bit in the sync realm too. So I've worked quite a lot in ads and trailers. It's so I just kind of started to see it all as kind of how can you be getting creative and getting people being creative. We're working with people who want to create and want to find them those opportunities to work on things they're excited about.
And the video game world is huge. I mean, you have to look at the youth and how much they're playing and how much they're learning about music through video games. There's great success stories these days of composers who got their first films because the director played a video game. There are so many crossover type stories that I think that what we're all saying is, as long as it's a great canvas to write on, we'll listen to the music for it. And I think especially during COVID, I spent a lot of time learning more about the video game world as a player and trying to understand the esports world. And, I'm a sports fan in general, and seeing esports, there's so much in that world. And I think that all three of us are saying the same thing. We do pay attention to that world just as much.
Oh, yeah.
We got asked a question earlier about presenting reels. I wanted to ask another question about that. This is something that certainly has been up for me recently. I know that, there are different approaches to this. Some people will do videos that present film clips with their work. And then I've seen some people say, oh, no, you don't want to do that. You just want to present the audio, because then people are going to get distracted by the visuals and criticizing the film or whatever that the music is featured in. Does anyone have I want to go to Arbel. Do you have a preference as far as that's concerned?
I have a lot of feelings about reels. I think they're actually they're so important to everything that we do. I personally like to be very involved in making reels with my clients. I kind of, when we're pitching on a project, first of all, I guess bare bones, I do lean more toward audio reels, not very much toward visual reels, unless the composer has one and really wants to include it maybe alongside things. Or I've had a number of times where someone specifically asked for a visual reel, but it's not been too often. It was just kind of like a producer preference or something. Because I think things like even just the order of the reel and all of that is really important, because you want the person to be listening through and basically hearing the score they're looking for. So if you kind of know a bit about the storyline of what you're pitching on, you can actually craft the reel a little bit to even almost follow that a little bit. Maybe it starts off with a nice track that feels very introductory, and then it kind of builds up a bit, and then there's a romantic moment, and then there's oh no, if you know that that's kind of the path that it follows, and you ideally want to maybe and with all of that, with keeping in mind that the person's probably going to listen to the first maybe 20 seconds of each track, so it's factor that in. But that's kind of my approach with it with a lot of my clients. It's just, trying to craft something that's going to ideally have the creative that's listening hear what they're looking for, or something in there that they're looking for their project, and go, okay, yeah, this is the score.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I like if we're doing just music, if it's just audio, I kind of feel 10 tracks, 12 max is the special number.
I'm going to write that down.
Definitely never more than 15, 18. If you have 20 something tracks on your playlist, that's too many. Go away.
And it's good. It makes you make decisions too. Yeah, it forces you a little bit to make some decisions about your music and stuff like that, which is I think a good exercise.
Totally. And it can be hard. And it's helpful when you have someone to send your reel to go, can you help edit this down? Because I know there's too many and I'm too close to them and I can't pick.
Yeah.
I very easily can scrub through each and yes, no. And I also really feel strongly about the first 3 tracks. You don't have a guarantee that someone's going to listen past the first, even one, but I would make the first 3 really spot on. If you have a detailed brief or a description of specifically what type of score or tone that they need musically, I would really try to deliver in those first 3 tracks. And if you don't have anything like that, then write something and stick it at the top. Visual reels, I think, are a great tool. I mostly apply those when there is one specific big out of reach project. Unless they're asking for it. Every once in a while we'll get asked that and we can go, okay, sure, we'll put something together. But when we're going after something that might be a long shot for somebody, or we have just more to prove in a pitch, I love seeing music paired to picture. It doesn't distract me. For me, it gives me the full experience of how the music functions in the story. And they shouldn't be big, long clips. I think they should be short and sweet. Sometimes people will write a beginning, middle, and end, maybe a 3-minute piece. They write the piece first, and then they can pull some clips offline to help, you know, if you haven't done the big project yet, you might not have visuals to pull from to make a visual reel, but maybe you write an amazing piece of music that has this arc, and you can cut some stuff from YouTube and other things. And obviously you're not selling it. It's just a sales tool for yourself. That's another thing that I like to do a lot, that I've learned from Richard Kraft over the years, that he will do to really help demonstrate, like, I really believe in this person. I know they might not have the credits, but they can nail this, and let me show you. So I like the video reel in those instances, sometimes. Sorry, Kevin, what were you gonna say?
No, I mean, you guys both hit on both the points. I think for me personally, I don't like. I mean, I much prefer more a audio reel. Maybe like Arbel was kind of saying, you know, I like to get straight to looking at just or listening just to the music. And I listen to music in so many different ways. I like to listen to the studio where I can really blast it loud and get into the music. Visual reels can be great if the composer wants to invest the time into doing it. You know, you don't want to, you know, falsify any of the projects and get into clips for things. Like, you don't want to put your music on top of other clips of things, because then I get distracted. Like, wait, is that in the actual movie or not? So I'm a more personal fan of audio reels, and I think Sarah nailed it on the head. You know, you have to look at the first, you could say anywhere between 3 to 5 are the first tracks that, like, they might not even go past listening to that, and they might only listen to 20 seconds of each track. But in those first 3 tracks, you really need to tell the story. You need to show your diversity. You need to show you're the right person for the project. And, you know, if your calling card should normally be your first track on a general reel, like the one that people are most going to identify with you or identify your sound. But then showing how you develop that, how you can develop those ideas and develop those things, I think entice me personally. But Sarah's also right that, like, sometimes you might not have something on your reel of something you're going after, and you have to write a demo for it, or write something that kind of fits it. So each reel is differently, but, you know, please don't send 20 track reels. Try to keep it, you know, I think 12 is a good key number.
Yeah. And
someone just said in the comments, sorry, Chris, to interrupt, that film directors listen with their eyes. I kind of think that's an interesting point, that we might, as people who are listening to music and trying to figure out how to sell it and get someone else excited about it and hire composers, you know, it's quicker for us to, like, listen through. But I do think that is interesting. Like, who are we sending it to? What goal are we trying to achieve? And how might they perceive it? I know a lot of times people don't have access to, like, fancy speakers in a big studio, even though, what a delicious way to enjoy some music. But they might be in their car, you know, or listening on their earpods, like walking their dog, you know, taking breaks or working at home or something. So I think it's important to sort of have an idea of, like, what the audience is, who's going to be listening to it, and what might be most impactful for them. Because you only get one shot to send music, and you want to make it count.
Yeah, and that's a piece of advice that I've heard too. Like, your first track has got to introduce people to your style very quickly. So, unless the project specifically calls for it, I imagine you don't want to do something that is very slow and ambient, like this sort of slow burning piece. You want to really get right into a melody and so forth.
Yeah, don't be afraid to, like, make edits of things. Like, get people listening to what you want them to hear. I think that's, like, a really, really important.
Yeah, it's like a commercial for you. It's like your reel is like a trailer for you, and you want to get to the juicy, exciting, interesting ideas quicker. So even if there's maybe, like, a really beautiful, intentionally contemplative track that maybe starts out a little bit slow, like, I always am like, cut those first 30 seconds. Let's get right into it. So the reel is the place to, like, make alts and edits on stuff.
Yeah. And the same thing to think about if you are going to write original stuff as demos to include in your reel and everything. Like, don't go and write a 3-minute track. I mean, that's great to have, but at the same time, like, write shorter tracks that are going to get to the meat of what you want them to hear, even if they're like 30 seconds to a minute or something like that. But at least it showcases what you're going after, because you don't want to leave it up. You can't assume that they're going to get to the 2-minute, 30-second mark and hear that big moment that you were building up to the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you made a great point about how they may be listening on all kinds of devices. You may have someone who's just listening on their phone, and the track still needs to be compelling, even with no bass, and these tinny sort of speakers.
Yeah.
And I think, we're probably on our last question now. This is from Colin Aguiar. Does diverse casting ever extend to composers? I know this has been a subject that's been up a lot in the composer representation world. Is diversity an advantage, or perhaps typecast at all? I know this is something that you specifically. Oh, go ahead.
No, it's just a good question.
Yeah.
And it's very relevant. People are definitely looking to hire diverse composers, and the question that I always ask, that we kind of need to have more information, like, well, what type of diversity? Like, who, does it have to do with the story that they're telling? Are they looking from someone from a particular walk of life who would have unique experiences that would, they would be able to offer something different? It's definitely, we get calls all the time, and we are actively, and have been over the last several years, looking for how can we broaden our roster in a way where we can find new and diverse talent. And it's an exciting time. I mean, there are so many pathways to becoming a composer. And there definitely are barriers, but they're less and less than they used to be. Arbel, what are your thoughts? You were going to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's very exciting that a lot of people are finally starting to realize that sometimes it really is important to have somebody from a specific background or identity that is going to be more tied to the content of the project, be the one providing that music. It doesn't mean that that's the case every single time, but I do really love that creatives and like music teams and stuff are reaching out more and more. If a project is from a particular cultural background and they want to find someone who's going to bring an authenticity to that. I will say that it's a tricky thing, because there's also, you get into there's still a lack of diversity in a lot of the roles who are even doing that hiring. So things aren't always approached the best way. And I've had to have a lot of very interesting conversations about that. But sometimes those identities become the only identifier, and that's an issue as well, because again, it's kind of, you kind of mentioned typecasting, and really it's stereotyping. And I think a lot of times someone will reach out looking for someone from a particular cultural background and just be like, we really want to hire a Black composer on this. Okay, like what kind of music are you looking for? And it's like all of that suddenly it's just kind of like it's the only identifier, and that's not helpful either. And it's great. It's like, that's great that you want to hire a Black composer on this project, and there's a great reason for you to have a Black composer on this, but also like that now it can't be their only identifier, so there's still a long way to go, I think, with all this, but I think it's really good that these conversations are happening. I think the fact that people are suddenly thinking about that, and it's like, wait, like, why don't we give somebody an opportunity here who maybe doesn't have the huge credits, but is going to bring like something so special and like something that's so tied to the story we're telling and an authenticity to it. And I just, so there's a ways to go, but it is happening. And I do find that really exciting. It does take sometimes, further conversations. I like to make sure that I'm setting my clients into safe environments. So if someone's not talking about people in the way that I feel the most comfortable, I'll have a conversation first before, sending folks over. But luckily, I think people are starting to really do the work and educate themselves. So that's really good.
And I think it's important too, before they reach out about a particular composer of ours with a diverse background, that they do a little bit of research, just because, we're talking about a Black composer doesn't mean that they do hip hop. I get that a lot. So I think it's important for, folks mean well, but do your research, do some listening, and you know, I think that's really important. And the other thing I was going to say is there are more and more opportunities, I think, for composers of color, for composers from the LGBTQIA community, for female composers, etc. I think there are more and more opportunities available. And one organization that is doing really, really great work is the CDC, not the COVID CDC, but the Composer Diversity Collective. They're doing amazing things, and there's a lot of job opportunities that come from that. You know, a lot of composers who are looking to hire assistants, or, you know, I need an extra set of hands on this thing. I need to throw a couple minutes towards somebody. All my folks are busy. I just need more help. I always recommend going to the CDC first. Yeah, it's great. They do events off, like a lot of panels like this. So that's another way to like immerse yourself in the community. And I think it's really important for composers of diversity to be able to see themselves in the roles that they want to play in. And so it's just a great community to be in, the CDC.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say the same thing. The CDC, the Alliance for Women in Film Composers, there are a lot,
yep.
Thanks to these organizations over the past couple of years, there's so much more opportunity for many new voices. And that's the great thing that's happening is we're talking about it. We're getting more opportunities in there. And, you know, it's because of the great work of these organizations.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, we're coming to the end of our time, but I really appreciate you all being here and answering questions, both from me and the audience. I feel like I could talk to you all for hours, but thanks very much. And yes, we'll end the panel there. You all have a great day. Thank you
so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
It's great.
Mm-hmm. All right, and for the last but not least order of business, I'm going to announce the winner of the DaVinci Resolve Studio seat, and that is going to be Matthew Wang. So congratulations, Matthew, and we'll be in touch with you about making arrangements for you to collect that. Anyway, thanks very much, everybody, for showing up. We have these panels all the time, and they're on all aspects of filmmaking. So hopefully you'll sign up for either the Blackmagic Collective newsletter on our site, or one of our social media accounts on the usual suspects, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and so on. And with that, yeah, you all have a great day.